Okay, you saw the title. In this video, we'll be reviewing Kinobody's system in the context of training, nutrition, recovery, mindset, and a little bit more. So the first thing the purpose of doing this is to identify the context of what he is doing and the context of what I do and the context of what other people in fitness do. Because a lot of the time, it's not that people are wrong. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're just lying, or sometimes they're just wrong. But sometimes you're just in different contexts. So, for example, if you don't know who Kinobody is, which I'll be shocked if you don't, he's like one of the biggest fitness influencers. He's one of the few who are actually probably natural. I really do believe he is, and I think there's quite a lot who aren't. And he's one of the biggest guys in space. He's got a very unique way of doing things, but there's a lot of crossovers between the way that I would do things, the way that some other people do things, and the way he does things. And it's not so much that they're wrong, it's or I'm wrong or he's wrong or whatever. It's more so the context. So, for example, he realistically targets intermediates, and his system in the context of a beginner would not be ideal in many sense. And so I'm going to break down a lot of the benefits and a lot of drawbacks to his system for training, nutrition, recovery, mindset, all that stuff. So my experience with his system, when I actually started in fitness or trying to get in shape, I was about 115 pounds. So if you're in England, that's like 52 kg, 8.5 stone, 8 stone 5 pounds, like girl weight, really. And I'm 5'8", so there's no excuse for height. So in this picture here, I go from start of 2017 to this is like March 2017, and this is October, November 2017. And it's 115 to 148. In this picture here, I'm 155, and this is years later. After that 9 months, I didn't really put too much of a focus on building more muscle, but this 9 months was a grueling 9 months, and I followed a lot of the principles in Kinobody's system, not all of them, because I was doing my own research. I was balls deep in research, and I realized a lot of what he was saying it could have just been his marketing at the time, to be honest, but a lot of what he was saying was really ahead of its time. After that, I went into like more weight calisthenics stuff, improving mobility. I was in jiu-jitsu a lot, so it stopped being my priority, but getting there really was. In terms of my own strength development, in this case, I was doing like body weight, no, not even body weights, chin-ups and push-ups. I remember I was in Vienna and I couldn't do push-ups anymore. I was doing assisted on chin-ups, and I got up to 30 kg in this period of time. At this point, I do 50 kg on chin-ups for 5 reps, that is. I can get one-arm pull-ups and things like that, weighted one-arm pull-ups, actually. So if you ever want to see any of that stuff, it's on my Instagram. Also, the people I work with are sedentary, extremely busy. That's where the crossover is with Kinobody system, because he promotes 3 days a week of training, and that's the exact same thing that I do, no more with lifting, and you're going to see the crossover benefits of that. But yeah, a lot of people I work with are software engineers. I work on more one-to-one system. What he does is he has a program that he expects people to switch their lives to follow: intermittent fasting, 3 days a week, reverse pyramid training, all that stuff, and a lot of it's really good, but you have to follow that lifestyle specifically. With my way of doing things, I adapt a lot more. So what I want to run through is my thoughts on his approach specifically, and break down each in terms of the context of if you want to prioritize building muscle, absolutely. If you want to prioritize losing fat, absolutely. If you're a beginner, if you're an intermediate, because again, he targets intermediates with his system. If you're going to get, I'm not sure if he does it purposefully, but you're going to get better results as an intermediate on his system than a beginner, and I'll explain why. Because the vast majority of people I work with are beginners in the sense that their strength is not incredible. They have never been able to control their nutrition, their impulses, improve their hormones, anything like that, to the point where they can actually be lean for a long period of time. So the people I work with, the beginners, he oftentimes works with people who've got like 5 years lifting experience. They'll buy his program and then they crack the code. So yeah, let's go through it. Reverse pyramid training is one of the main principles that he utilizes, and I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's probably the best thing to come from his system. Reverse pyramid training basically has you do the heaviest set first in a 4 to 6 rep range, and in his system he drops it by about 10% for the second set for 6 to 8, and then third set drop it then another 10%, 8 to 10 reps. Take 3 to 5 minutes rest. I agree with the rest. The longer the rest, the better. If time wasn't a factor, we take as much rest as possible, 15 minutes. But obviously time is a factor, so you're going to get 80-90% of your recovery benefits in 3 to 5 minutes. So he was one of the first people to actually talk about having long rest periods. When I was watching his YouTube videos and doing lots of research to figure out like what's the best system for me to get in shape, a lot of people were against doing long rest times. That's probably not the case now. It's a lot more popular, but it was unpopular. And that's why he was quite far ahead of his time. He's got other training principles like rest pause, and I'm not a big fan of those. Uh, I think he'll talk a little bit about the difference between sarcoplasmic hypertrophy and myofibrillar hypertrophy, and although it's just a theory, it's really true in the sense that if you can build muscle whilst building a lot of strength as a natural, you're going to be able to maintain that muscle mass a lot more. There's actually interesting research unrelated to him about the gut bacteria benefits of someone who is trained, and their ability to maintain muscle mass through a non-trained period. And that's why we don't want to do like pump training, which is a lot more of what I would say his rest pause style of doing things is, because it doesn't really build like long-term muscle. Like myofibrillar hypertrophy is more like pump training. You keep it as long as you keep doing it. So maybe that's opinion based, but his reverse pyramid training, I'm a big fan of it. The only difference that I would say for it is I would drop greater than 10% for my clients. So my clients, again, much more beginner based. A lot of their targets are like larger amounts of fat loss as well, not just like lose 10 to 20 pounds. And so having greater discrepancies between the percentages, especially considering a lot of the guys I work with won't be starting with body weight, they're starting with assistance, and his is very much geared towards starting with body weight and adding weight immediately. Exercise selection, I think his exercise selection is one of the best out of people in fitness. So many people prioritize deadlifts and squats and powerlifting movements and things like that, especially like when he was huge, like 5-6 years ago, whatever. And now it's moved more to a lot of people prioritizing machines. And I think the sweet spot personally is somewhere in between there. And I think he gets that. Exercises like dips, chin-ups, Bulgarian split squats are extremely easy to progress as you're losing fat, which means you can build muscle and lose fat at the same time, because progression is going to drive the growth, and losing fat is synergistic with improving body weight movements and adding weight to body weight movements. And something like a Bulgarian split squat is going to hit your glutes better than a squat. It's going to destroy your quads and adductors. It's going to balance out your legs. It's going to improve your mobility. It's going to improve your upper body stability and grip strength, which all of this stuff carries over to other exercises. And so it's better for the building side of things. And it's way less injury risk. If you're doing back squats to try to grow, it's just, you're going to have to build a lot more strength, and you're probably not going to build your glutes very well. Whereas something like a Bulgarian split squat, which is something he will talk about doing, is much less injury risk. Same with Romanian deadlifts and things like that. You don't see him deadlifting too much. I'm not a fan of deadlifting. I can't remember which powerlifter who said this, but I completely agree with the idea that you should only deadlift to deadlift. It's just like running. You should only run to run. You should not be running to lose fat. I personally, I did a marathon this year. I did not do it to get lean. My physique got worse as a result of it. So what I do like about Kinobody's system is that he's very upfront with the fact that it's just about achieving like a Hollywood physique. It's not about becoming extremely athletic or like becoming a bodybuilder or anything like that. But with his exercise selection and the fact that he focuses a little bit on that ATG stuff as well in more recent years, things like Nordic curls and stuff like that, if you were to follow that system, I don't know if he coaches that, but that exercise selection is extremely athletic. It's long-term maintenance is incredible, and it's low injury risk. So I think his exercise selection is probably the best thing he does. Moving on to intermittent fasting, however, I should say actually on the exercise selection, he also has some stupid movements, which are just like really pointless, like making up exercises. Like I think it was one of his curling variations, or doing like a Cuban press and things like that, and swearing by Cuban presses, and like a one arm cable shrug. Like they're pointless, but the vast majority of like what he focuses on and where you get your results is one of the best exercise selections, and it's very beginner friendly as well. He doesn't really show people, but you can regress a Bulgarian split squat to just a lunge, and it's common sense, right? But it's very beginner friendly, and it's extremely advanced friendly as well, because you can always just get a barbell if you really want to load the hell out of that. And I've taken clients through the system. If you go onto my Instagram, you'll see this. I document some of my clients, and I've taken clients to like 90 pounds on dips in a 12-week period for body weight, and the Bulgarian split squats even heavier if you check Alex, for example. But yeah, the exercise selection is great. Intermittent fasting, if you've watched any Kinobody videos, you know that he's huge on intermittent fasting. I was using it, trying to build muscle. I was using it in this period of time. I think it's an extremely good organizational tool, but the thing with his system is it's get on board or don't at all. And the way that I do things is I'll adjust it to my clients' lifestyles. And so intermittent fasting is a great organizational tool. Some of the principles are extremely important. You should be comfortable with feeling hunger. You need to develop that. You need to give your digestive system a rest, and you need to be clever with the way that you spike insulin. You should be spiking insulin a little bit higher after workouts, and it shouldn't just be a constant thing. So by telling people do intermittent fasting, it ticks a lot of boxes for people to just follow, naturally taking care of a lot of their organizational issues, their gut issues, etc. But it doesn't mean it's the ideal system for everybody. And again, if you're going into like a bodybuilding context, again, I'm not really targeting people like that. He's not really targeting people like that so much so. But if you if you do shorten the window massively, you do decrease your ability to spread protein through the day, which will be like that extra 20% of protein synthesis is getting spread through the day, even though like total protein is most important. So I think the problem with intermittent fasting is it really does depend on the individual, and it's certainly not friendly for everybody in different stages. But for those it helps, it really does. Nutrient density. So he talks about like as a main carb source, potatoes. I'm a big fan of that. Most extremely satiating, very bioavailable, digests really well for like a carb, that is. And if you switch to sweet potato, you get a bunch of vitamin A. Big fan of that. Talks about eating out, steaks, things like that. Steak is so overrated in terms of like how nutrient dense it is. It is nutrient dense, but it's not like the most nutrient dense food ever. I don't see him talking about fish ever, which is like, I mean, the salmon is one of the most nutrient dense foods on the planet by far. I don't really see like him talking so much about the nutrients, and I think that for a lot of people who are struggling with hunger, like intermittent fasting is a good tool for it, but a better tool is increasing nutrient density of your food intake. And I think he naturally covers quite a bit of that by saying get high protein, 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, so you've got enough fats and carbs. I'm a big fan of that, but I do think he misses out on a lot of nutrients which are important to people. And considering that he really targets intermediates over beginners, I get this in with beginners. His 80-20 balance is great. It doesn't demonize any. It doesn't demonize any food group or anything like that. It just understands that you've got to be in moderation with this kind of thing. And I think that too many people right now are like carnivore. You can't have vegetables because of plant defense chemicals, and you take something that is kind of true, and then they blow it out of proportion for marketing purposes. I don't think he's ever really done that. And so the reality is that you can absolutely lose fat whilst eating shit. You shouldn't. It's ideal to actually just eat in a perfect diet, but the reality is that the best route for fat loss and for muscle growth is the one that you're willing to take, and this really helps people do it long term. So I do like his approach to 80-20. In terms of integrity, I've never really seen him promote something that doesn't work, and I've never seen him do. I don't think he's on steroids either, so I don't think he's fake. I've personally never taken any of his supplements, but I've seen like a lot of people say good things about them. The thing is, like if you look into his supplements and the stuff that it includes, it's nothing that you don't get from focusing on nutrient density. So, for example, vitamin D, cholesterol are extremely important in the production of testosterone. Testosterone is produced in your sleep. If you can eat something like that later on in the day, eggs, you're going to improve that function. He would have you like take his supplements. So it's like if you follow a very nutrient dense diet, you don't need it, but if you don't, you probably would. It's kind of like living in England. If you don't get sun, you're going to need to supplement vitamin D. In terms of progress, I think his system's really good for pushing progress. And again, with the injury risk, because of his exercise selection, it's not that high. But I do think that dropping 10% between like reverse pyramid sets and like really forcing progression, because I force progression with my clients. I really push them in that first set, but I'm quite blasé about the second and third set. Just like give your best and really focus on the technique for the carryover. I've seen like a lot of his testimonials. A lot of the time, it does force people to push progression, and they'll sacrifice technique. They'll be doing pull-ups with their shoulders in their ears and things like that. It's got a little bit of a risk for injury over the future, but he doesn't do any like overuse, over volume type training. His frequencies are like quite a lot less than mine. So, for example, with my clients, I'll have them train a body part 2 to 3 times a week. He just likes like once a week. But I do think his progress is really good for his clients. So as recovery, I think three workouts a week is perfect, 3 to 4 maximum. It's getting more and more popular, and then again, that's why I say that he really spearheaded that for people. But finally, in terms of mentality, I would say that it's his way of doing things kind of encourages people to like have a bit of a lazy work their way around things mentality. At least I can see a lot of people not getting results with the system because it does require you to be extremely hardworking in the moment. And when you're doing intermittent fasting, it does not just cover like not being in a surplus. And he doesn't say that, but I do think that he makes it seem a lot easier than it is. And I think that will attract people who are a little bit not willing to put the work in. And I wonder how many like testimonials he's got like per people he's worked with, because I think it's not. I'm not a big agree with. I don't agree so much with David Gong's mentality of just like kill yourself for the point of it. But at the same time, I think he's all the way on the other spectrum. There's a happy medium somewhere in between where you do have to be willing to say no to going out sometimes when you're in a fat loss process. But yeah, I think his testimonials are great now. In conclusion, yeah, for intermediates, you've got to remember, just like with my clients, you're not targeting bodybuilders. So you'll always get the people who criticize them are bodybuilders who are just like trying to get the most out of building muscle, and you can get like 80% of the results with a lot less effort and put your effort into other things. And so I agree with that. Yeah. So if you're more interested in my way of doing things, so say you're sedentary, quite busy software engineer type client, and you want some free advice, I've made some modules on Skool. It's link in the description. Hope this helps.